Every time you hit that subscribe button, you're not just following a channel. You're joining a growing family, a space where your voice matters, and together, we create something meaningful. Your support fuels the passion behind every story, every moment shared here. It might seem small, but your subscription is a huge part of what makes this journey possible. So if you found something that resonates, something that sparks a thought or emotion, hit that subscribe button and let's keep building this together. Ezinne stood in her late father's workshop, surrounded by the remnants of his powerful tools. The memories of Adanna's cruelty weighed heavily on her mind, and her thoughts spiraled back to that day, the day that changed everything. Adanna had always been envious of Ezinne, but it reached its peak when she discovered Ezinne's happiness despite all the abuse. One evening, Adanna concocted a plan to ruin the one thing that kept Ezinne joyful, her relationship with Ethan. She invited Ethan over, offering him money for a favor, but secretly drugged his drink. Ethan awoke the next day to a horror he never imagined. Adanna had taken advantage of him while he was unconscious, and had sent the incriminating photos to Ezinne. Ezinne had stared at those photos for what felt like hours, her heart breaking. She loved Ethan deeply, and though she knew it wasn't his fault, the images pierced through her soul. That night, after Ethan tearfully explained everything, she felt something inside her snap. Ezinne's emotions twisted into something darker, something she had long buried. Her fingers trembled as she typed a simple response to Adanna's taunting message, smiling face with smiling eyes. But inside, she was shattered. Her father's dark magic, which she had avoided for years, now seemed like the only way out. Ezinne wiped the tears from her cheeks as she stared at the calabash and the waste bead in her hands. Her father had warned her about the price of using dark magic, but this wasn't about him anymore. This was about her, about reclaiming her dignity, about revenge. With a deep breath, Ezinne sat cross-legged on the floor, the ancient spellbook open before her. Her voice trembled as she began to recite the ancient words she had sworn never to use. The air in the room grew thick as the spirits of the ancestors stirred, recognizing the incantations of their lineage. She picked up the waste bead, her father's most powerful tool. It wasn't just any bead. It had been imbued with a spell that would turn the wearer's desires into reality, for better or for worse. Ezinne slowly wrapped it around her waist, her fingers carefully tightening each loop as the power surged through her. The incantations grew louder, filling the small workshop with a pulsating energy. Her eyes flashed with determination as she chanted her final words, sealing the spell with Adanna's name whispered like a curse. Adanna, Adanna, your time has come. With the ritual complete, the once dormant bead now glowed faintly against Ezinne's skin, a sign of the magic it held. Ezinne stood up, the weight of the spell resting on her waist, and looked out the window. She could feel the connection stretching beyond the village, linking her to Adanna in the city. The time had come for Adanna to face the consequences of her actions. As the sun began to rise, Ezinne packed her belongings and made her way back to the city. Her heart felt lighter, but a deep sense of anticipation filled her. She knew the spell had been cast, but the real change had yet to unfold. Adanna's life took a sharp, downward spiral that no one could explain but her. It started when Ezinne, the once overlooked maid, stepped into her shoes, taking everything that had once defined Adanna's status and leaving her in a constant state of disbelief and frustration. The spell was in full swing, but Adanna couldn't understand why the world was suddenly shifting against her. It began with her boyfriend. Adanna had always known him as loyal, attentive, and proud to be seen with her. But now, it was as if she were invisible to him. One evening, she caught him laughing with Ezinne, that maid who was meant to serve her, not seduce her boyfriend. Days later, her worst nightmare came true. He left her, and without any explanation, began taking Ezinne out in public. They dined at restaurants where Adanna had always been a cherished guest. Now, she was an outsider looking in as they laughed, whispered sweet words, and held hands as if Adanna had never existed. He spoiled Ezinne, buying her expensive gifts, paying for weekend getaways, all the while dismissing Adanna with cruel words that cut deeper than any knife. He openly treated her like trash, as if every good memory they'd shared was an illusion. Every passing day turned her heartbreak into searing anger and helplessness. Adanna's parents had always been her rock firm, but loving. Yet they too began treating her differently. Her father, once proud of her every achievement, started avoiding her, his once warm gaze now cold. Her mother, who had always doted on her, now turned her affection to Ezinne, fawning over the maid as if she were the daughter they'd always wanted. Her parents started gifting Ezinne things that had always been Adanna's weekend trips, shopping sprees, family dinners at high-end restaurants. One weekend, they even gave Ezinne a surprise vacation abroad, one that had been promised to Adanna months before. They told her she was too irresponsible and that Ezinne had earned their trust. The final blow came when they allowed Ezinne to redecorate parts of the house, even giving her a free hand to make decisions that should have belonged to Adanna. The place she had called home now felt like a prison, where she was no longer welcome or loved. Adanna's friends, the circle of girls who had always clung to her every word, slowly distanced themselves. At first, it seemed like minor disagreements, but soon they were avoiding her calls, ignoring her at school, and even laughing with Ezinne during lunch breaks. Ezinne, once the quiet maid in the background, now wore Adanna's spotlight like a queen's crown. She hosted parties where Adanna's old friends flocked to her, praising her, forgetting that Adanna had once been the center of their world. Everywhere Adanna turned, she found herself alone, her once sparkling social life replaced by whispers and side glances that chipped away at her confidence. Just when Adanna thought things couldn't get worse, the cruelest blow came in the form of a message. One evening, as she sat alone in her room, her phone buzzed with a new notification. It was a picture message. With trembling hands, she opened it, and her heart stopped. The image was of Ezinne kissing her ex-boyfriend. They were in Adanna's favorite spot, a place filled with cherished memories. It was a deliberate stab, meant to break her completely. The shock was too much. Adanna's vision blurred, her chest tightened, and darkness enveloped her as she collapsed, sinking into a coma induced by the overwhelming stress of betrayal and heartbreak. Meanwhile, Ethan, ever the perceptive one, noticed the increasingly erratic behavior in Ezinne. The girl who had once been shy and kind-hearted was now growing too bold, too confident, too different. He had seen how her laughter had become sharp, her eyes holding a secret that she wouldn't share with him. Every time he asked about her newfound power, she deflected, saying everything was just falling into place. But Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. Late into the night, Ethan pored over his notes and the ancient texts he had uncovered about the mysterious Kayamata spell. The more he read, the more alarmed he became. He had never believed in magic, but the changes in Ezinne's behavior along with the sudden misfortunes plaguing Adanna aligned too perfectly with what the spell promised. The power to control hearts, minds, and even fate itself. With each passing day, the changes in Ezinne weighed on Ethan's mind. He was determined to find out the truth, no matter how dark the path ahead seemed. The fear of losing the woman he loved to a magic too powerful for anyone to control drove him. He had already begun planning his trip to the village, hoping to uncover secrets about Ezinne's lineage and find a way to stop her before it was too late. Ethan sat in his small room, the air thick with the scent of old paper and ink. Papers were strewn across his desk, each one filled with frantic notes and sketches related to the mysterious Kayamata spell. The dim glow from the lamp above illuminated his furrowed brow as he pored over the pages of an ancient spellbook, a sense of urgency coursing through him. He felt the weight of time pressing down on him, knowing that Ezinne was slipping away into darkness. As he flipped through the yellowed pages, his heart raced at the sight of a passage that sent chills down his spine. Kayamata is a powerful spell that allows the caster to control the hearts and minds of others. It binds the target's will to the caster, often at the cost of their own essence. He recalled the events leading to Ezinne's transformation, the changes in her demeanor, and the fear that clung to him like a shadow. Then, in the middle of a lengthy description about breaking the spell, Ethan found the crucial information. The waist bead that Ezinne wore was the key. He learned that cutting it would sever the magical connection binding her to the darkness. A surge of hope filled his chest, but he also understood the gravity of the action. He would need to confront Ezinne about it, a task that filled him with both trepidation and determination. At the hospital, the sterile scent of antiseptics surrounded Adanna as she lay in a bed, her body frail and lifeless, connected to machines that beeped rhythmically. Her mind was hazy, but she could feel an unfamiliar heaviness pressing down on her chest, as if the darkness she had dabbled in had come to collect its due. Slowly, Adanna opened her eyes, the bright lights above blinding her momentarily. Panic coursed through her when she realized she was not alone. Ethan sat by her side, his face etched with concern. As recognition dawned on her, tears pooled in her eyes, spilling over as she recalled the events that led her to this moment. "Ethan," she croaked, her voice barely above a whisper. He leaned closer, his heart aching at the sight of her vulnerability. "Adanna, you're awake." "Thank goodness," he breathed, relief washing over him. But the worry still flickered in his eyes as he wondered if she would remember what she had done. Adanna's gaze dropped to her hands, trembling under the weight of regret. "I'm so sorry for what I did," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I didn't understand." Ethan placed a hand on hers, feeling the warmth of her skin against the cold reality of her situation. "It's okay," he replied softly, "but you need to tell me what happened." Everything. As they talked, Adanna recounted the strange visions that had haunted her during her coma. She described fleeting glimpses of Ezinne, laughter twisted into something dark, and the overwhelming sense of dread that accompanied her dreams. "I could feel something wrong. It was like I was trapped in darkness, and I couldn't escape," she confessed, her voice trembling. Ethan listened intently, his heart heavy with concern. "I think it's connected to Ezinne," he said, recalling the change he'd noticed in her. "There's something about that spell, something that binds you both. I've been researching it, and I think I know how to break it." Adanna's eyes widened, fear mingling with hope. "What do you mean? How can we stop it?" Ethan leaned forward, determination radiating from him. "The spell is linked to the bead Ezinne wears. I need to cut it. That's the only way to sever the connection and free both of you." Adanna's breath caught in her throat as she processed his words. "But what if it doesn't work? What if it makes things worse?" "We have to try," Ethan said, squeezing her hand gently. "I promise I'll do everything I can to help you both. You're not alone in this." As he left the hospital, Ethan's mind raced with thoughts of what lay ahead. He could feel the weight of the world pressing down on him, the need to act quickly becoming more urgent. Each step he took away from the sterile white walls of the hospital strengthened his resolve. He had to confront Ezinne and cut the bead, but he also knew that the darkness lurking in the shadows would not give up easily. The night air felt different as he walked through the city, charged with energy and the unknown. The whispers of the Kayamata spell echoed in his mind, and he could sense the battle ahead, not just for Ezinne, but for Adanna's redemption as well. Ethan's heart raced with determination. He would not let the darkness claim either of them. He would fight for their future no matter the cost. The air was charged with excitement as Ethan prepared for the small party at his house. The aroma of fried plantains and jollof rice wafted through the rooms, mingling with the sounds of laughter and music. Friends mingled, their voices echoing against the walls. But Ethan's focus was solely on Ezinne. He had invited her, hoping to bring her into a relaxed environment, unaware of the dark grip the spell had over her. As the evening unfolded, Ethan watched Ezinne interact with their friends. She seemed slightly distant, her laughter lacking its usual warmth. But tonight, he was determined to help her break free from the shadows that had enveloped her. He approached her, offering a plate of food. "You should eat something," he said, smiling. "Thanks, Ethan," she replied, her eyes sparkling momentarily before dimming again. As the night deepened, Ethan decided to suggest a sleepover. "Why don't we keep the party going with a sleepover? It'll be fun," he called out to everyone, and soon the group was buzzing with excitement. Ezinne hesitated but ultimately agreed, drawn in by the laughter and the familiarity of old friends. Once the noise settled and they prepared for bed, Ezinne began to feel drowsy. She sat on the couch, her eyelids heavy, and eventually drifted off to sleep, her body relaxed but her face still troubled. Ethan watched her for a moment, his heart aching at the sight of his friend trapped in a spell she didn't understand. With everyone else asleep, Ethan's heart raced as he approached Ezinne. The room was quiet, the only sound being the soft breathing of his friends. He knelt beside her, carefully retrieving the bead from her waist. He had studied the spellbook extensively and knew that this was the moment that would either save her or plunge her deeper into darkness. Taking a deep breath, he cut the bead, whispering the incantation from the book as he did so. The air seemed to shimmer around them, and a wave of energy surged through the room. Ethan felt a weight lift, a sign that the spell was beginning to unravel. Ezinne stirred, her eyes fluttering open. Confusion washed over her as she focused on Ethan. "What happened?" she murmured, rubbing her eyes as if waking from a dream. Ethan's heart swelled with hope. "Ezinne, you were under a spell. It was a powerful enchantment that made you act against your will. But I think it's broken now." Ezinne's expression shifted from confusion to realization. A spell. She recalled moments filled with shadows, actions that felt foreign. "Why didn't I see it?" "You were caught in its grip," Ethan explained gently. "But you're free now." As Ezinne processed his words, a mixture of relief and guilt washed over her. "I can't believe I let it happen," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I hurt so many people." The next day, Adanna arrived at Ethan's house, still reeling from the events that had transpired. She stood hesitantly at the door, taking a deep breath before stepping inside. She found Ezinne sitting at the table, a ghost of her former self, but no longer shrouded in darkness. Tentatively, Adanna approached her. "Ezinne," she began, her voice shaking. "I need to apologize. I treated you terribly. I let my jealousy consume me, and I'm so sorry for what I did." Ezinne looked up, surprise flickering across her face. "You hurt me, Adanna, but I can see that you regret it." "I do," Adanna replied, her eyes misting over. "I've learned my lesson. I can't let my insecurities control me anymore. You deserved better, and I want to be a better friend." Ezinne met her gaze, and after a moment, a smile broke through the tension. "I forgive you, Adanna. We all make mistakes. What matters is that we learn from them." The two girls shared a heartfelt conversation, discussing their experiences and how they had both grown. They realized that their past rivalry had been rooted in misunderstandings and insecurities. Their laughter began to fill the room again, a melody of renewed friendship. Ethan watched from a distance, a smile spreading across his face as he saw the two girls begin to heal. He had fought for Ezinne's freedom, but now he could see the strength in their bond as they reconciled. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the room, Ezinne and Adanna made plans for the future. "Let's start fresh," Adanna suggested, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "We can be stronger together." "Absolutely," Ezinne agreed, her heart lightening with each word spoken. Ethan felt a sense of peace, wash over him as he witnessed their reconciliation. They had faced darkness, but emerged with newfound strength. Standing together, the three of them represented a brighter future, united in friendship and understanding. With laughter echoing around them, they embraced the journey ahead, ready to face whatever challenges life threw their way, knowing they had each other's backs. Their hearts were healed, and the shadows that once loomed over them had finally dissipated, replaced by the warm light of friendship. The story had come full circle, and as they stepped into the evening together, it felt like a new beginning.